Zak, thank you very much for joining us, first of all.
My pleasure.
What does high performance mean to you?
High performance, it means a lot of things to me. Energy, results, being very self-critical, always striving for perfection, but never quite getting there.
Okay, let's talk about the self-critical element of all of those things, because being kind to yourself is an important part of high performance as well. I wonder whether this is something that you can trace right back to the beginning, really, when you were an aspiring racing driver, and the fact that you maybe had to be hard on yourself to get to where you wanted to get to, full of dreams, full of ambition.
Yeah, I found blaming other people doesn't really fix anything. So I've always felt, whether it's through my racing career or my business career, you need to be critical of yourself because you're in control of everything, even when things might be out of your control, but you control how you handle it. So I've always gone through life figuring out I need to do stuff better to achieve. And if you kind of don't own it, then how do you ever fix it or improve? So I'll walk away from today and I'll watch this when it airs and I'll go, oh, I wish I would have said that a little bit different, or I wish I would have said that differently, in that strive for perfection and always improving. And that's kind of how I run my life.
So when did you discover this then? We talk often about fault versus responsibility.
Yeah.
Loads of things in your life are not your fault, but they're your responsibility. If you have that mindset, you can then deal with them. When did you first?
I think from day one, because I never had the resources to either start a company or racing career, so I always had to get it from elsewhere. And so I think I learned early on, what do I need to do to get what I want out of someone else to sponsor me or be a customer or a client, whatever the case may be. So I always kind of focused on what do I need to do to get others to do what I want them to do, to give me what I need so I can go do what I want to do. So I think I learned early on nothing was going to be kind of gifted to me, or I wasn't fortunate to have things. We were a middle-class family, so I didn't grow up poor, but, I did have food provided to me. But, as far as racing goes, we didn't have that type of wealth, and therefore learned early on I had to go get it, and that was all about what do I need to do to go get it.
So what about the role of your parents in this sense, because that sounds like that kind of mindset was nurtured and encouraged. So would you tell us a little bit about their role?
Yeah, I think they had a big part to play. My dad's a musician and music arranger, and my earliest memories were he just was locked in his room working. So he was a workaholic and very passionate about what he did. And so early on it was like, well, Dad's got a kind of a cool job and looks like it's not a job because he's not kind of checking in anywhere. So I think I got work ethic from him and kind of passion. And then my mom was and is a self-employed travel agent. She's quite a networker, extroverted, going in and pulling in customers and clients, and did that through relationships. So she was really good at what I call relationship marketing, and I think I got that side from her, because that's a lot of, if I look at what I do, I love what I do. It doesn't feel like a job. I'm a workaholic, but a lot of my work is about relationships. So I think if I look at what my mom and dad did, which was totally different, it's kind of a blend of what I saw that I think I do today.
And what about the kind of advice that they offered you? Is there any that stands out that you still use today?
They didn't really give me advice. I think I more watched what they did as opposed to them. My dad didn't talk to me about work ethic. I just saw what he did. I saw how hard my mom worked. So I never got kind of the speech of, work hard or do this. It was more, I watched them operate.
But you must have found a way to live with ambition and desire and a belief that you can do great things, because it's not the norm to go, I want to be a racing driver and go out and make it happen when you haven't got millions of pounds from your dad to fund that career. And then equally when that came to an end, and we can talk about what that moment was like when you weren't going to become the next superstar US Formula One driver, then you pivoted into business. And again, you must have had loads of ambition to make the business as successful as you did. So do you remember when that ambition first was sort of burning inside you to be better and how you channeled it?
Yeah, I think very early on back to baseball. Baseball is what I wanted. I wanted to be a baseball player.
Is that right?
And I was good at baseball.
How old are we talking here?
Oh, I'm going 6, 7 years old, and I was very good at baseball. I was terrible in school. I was definitely a problem child. I was kicked out of a few high schools.
What sort of stuff?
Fighting, and not showing up. And I was very early on, if I was into something, I was all in. And if I wasn't into something, I couldn't focus. Right. I just had no interest. And so I kind of had an on and off switch. But I think that on switch is what's always driven me. If I want something, I work extremely hard to get it. I think now I've matured a bit that, life can't quite be an on-off switch. And when you're a CEO, some of the stuff you'd like to turn off, you need to deal with.
So can we talk about hard work then very briefly? People often say on this podcast, yeah, I work hard. Tell us what hard work looks like to you.
Hard work, for me, I'm now 50 years old. I've been working since I was about probably 15, 16. I've been 7 days a week, 12-hour days since then. I'm working on getting better at work-life balance. I've missed birthdays and things, holidays, which is, in hindsight, I wish if I could do that over again, I wouldn't, but I don't think I'm the only CEO to tell that story that they've struggled with work-life balance. But for me, I'm up and at it 5 a.m. and I'm routinely going to 10 p.m. I travel 260 days a year. It's a way of life for me. So you're right. Everybody says they work hard. But I know how hard I work, and I love it. I mean, it doesn't feel like work for me. I can always make another call. And that's, one of the issues that, my wife tries to help me with is, having an off button sometimes, because it can become unhealthy when you work as hard as some people do, as I do.
So can you tell us a little bit about the unhealthy element of that work ethic?
You end up not being there for your family and your kids as much as you should be. Yeah. You do get into a habit of, I got to do the next phone call, but actually, if you take out an hour to have dinner instead of eating it at your desk, the world isn't going to come to an end. So I kind of operate that everything's urgent, but not everything's important. And so it's manifested itself in missing too many birthdays and holidays and not taking vacations, or being on vacation but still being on my phone during the vacation. Now what I've done is learn to compromise, where I'll set times when I'm on vacation where I'm off the phone and I'm allowed to be on the phone, or I'll do it in the morning before everyone gets up, and I'll kind of shut down during the day. And what I've found is when you have a great team around you, the world doesn't come to an end if you're off your phone for an hour or two. But it takes some discipline when you're kind of addicted to working.
I'm interested also, though, in that link that you have here with McLaren, with mind, in terms of mental health. And when you describe that, I'll be honest, it sounds exhausting, and I appreciate that's probably not for everybody. But what are the mental health implications as well that you found of having such a ferocious work ethic?
Stress. I've definitely physical health, right? I'm unfortunately not in the shape I'd like to be in. I don't take time to work out. I'm eating in hotel rooms. I'm eating on planes. And so I think the biggest thing I've noticed is, I'm not in the physical condition I'd like to be in, and then I find that when I do kind of get a moment, it's like I'd rather lay down. I've run so hard than like the idea of going to a gym and pounding it out for 2 hours. Now,
Yes.
COVID was good for that because I ended up just working on my treadmill all day, so that was good. But now I'm back into my bad habits. But I think for me, stress. But it's something that we kind of started off with being kind of self-critical. I know this is my weakness, not my only weakness, but a weakness, and I'm working a lot on trying to make it better.
But here's a question for you then. Do you think because it must be quite seductive in terms of the success that you've had, and you can clearly link your work ethic to really tangible rewards. Do you think if you'd have done anything differently, say if you'd have had a more balanced family life, or you'd have maybe taken more time out for yourself, you would have achieved the same success that you've had?
You know, I find it hard to believe if I skipped that one day of travel, or if I put the phone down for another hour, that things would have been radically different. But I do think it's kind of a ways of working in an intensity that, you know, I'm not sure. I wouldn't kind of change what I've done. I'm happy with where we are, and I've got a great family, so there's not been any permanent damage. Just some yelling along the way.
But if you saw your son taking on those same traits, what would you advise to him?
Yeah, I would definitely give him the advice of make sure you take some time off, take those breaks. If I would I do the same thing again? No, I would make those adjustments because I think I could land in the same place, but that's easy to say in hindsight. But I would definitely, and my sons have seen this, and I think they've advised me to slow down at times. So I think hopefully while they've got great work ethic, they've seen the downside, if you'd like, of having work be too intense, and I think they won't want to repeat that.
It's interesting this for me because I'm obviously at a different level to you, but I almost feel like I'm listening to myself talking here. But the thing is, I think what people have to understand is like, if you're excited by what you do and you're like an eternal optimist, I don't know whether you're the same, but every time an email comes in or a deal might be on the offing or a proposition, I think this could be the most amazing thing. And often it doesn't happen, right? But it's that feeling that this is the one. So therefore, it can't wait. You've got to deal with it now. And it is really exciting. And I think you can get into the habit of being like that. And I think that it is exciting, isn't it? It's not for everyone, but actually your life is exciting. This excites you, the busyness, the phone going all the time, doing those deals. It's an addictive life. But the question is, what's it about? Like, are we sort of chasing something? Are we missing something? Are we lacking something? It's
definitely adrenaline,
Yeah.
and the art of the deal or whatever whether that's a sponsor deal or signing a driver or an employer. It's just constantly pushing forward. I am optimistic that things will work out. I'm pessimistic in that I kind of assume the worst, and that's what drives me. It was interesting when I sold my company. They had a gentleman come in and interview me. They wanted to kind of, what's this guy like as a CEO? What are his hot buttons? How do we kind of manage him? And they said there's two types of successful people. Those that are the pursuit of victory and those that are the fear of failure. And I'm the fear of failure. So that's where the paranoia comes in, and I think that's where the drive comes in. I think it's probably the unhealthier of the two scenarios, is to kind of live in this constant fear that something bad's going to happen, and that's what I've always used to motivate myself. Is I got to get ahead, I got to get further ahead, because what if tomorrow's a bad day? So that resonated with me when kind of the report came out, and I was like, there's two types of individuals, and that's definitely my intensity, but I think that comes with another layer of stress than being that person who's pursuing the thrill of victory.
So let's talk about that first big failure then in your career, so your racing driving career. What did that do to you when that realization came that wasn't going to be the pathway you were going to succeed?
Yeah, so I've had lots and lots of failures of various sizes, right? You kind of have them every day. The racing one was the biggest because that's what I wanted to do, is drive from McLaren, race from McLaren. I mean, I'm happy where I've ended up, but it wasn't the first part of the dream job was being in a race suit on the podium. And I heard for 10 years that I was really good at sponsorship and marketing and should maybe quit racing. And that when you're in the middle of your racing and people are effectively saying you're better at this than that doesn't sit well with you. For me, it motivated me. But over time, I came to realize the right. And I was on the track with people like Juan Pablo Montoya and Jos Verstappen, Max's father, and they were just doing stuff with race cars that I couldn't do. And you eventually, you don't want to believe it. So I think it probably took me longer to be self-critical. In a race car, there's so many other variables. Well, the car wasn't that good, et cetera. And there was some truth to that. But then you do, after enough time, kind of go, yeah, it's not going to happen. And it was really the necessity to make a living that drove me getting into the business I got into, as opposed to, I always had a passion for sponsorship and working with people, but it was more, I got to make a living now. And that's how the business got started.
So you created Just Marketing International. I remember when I arrived in Formula One as a presenter, everyone was like, if you need to speak to the people that do the deals in this sport, JMI are the people that you need to go and meet. So can you explain for people how you went about not just setting up a business, but being really successful?
Yeah, it started, I was sponsored by TWA, the airline, and I was here my first 5 years of racing in the middle 90s. And I got a deal to race back in the States, so I went to TWA and said, I'm going to leave, go back to the States. And they said, hey, the sponsorship's going great. Can't you place it with someone in pit lane? You must know all the guys and gals and how the sport works. And I went, yeah, I could do that. And that's how the business got started. I actually placed it with Nigel Mansell's Formula 3000 team, and that was kind of the first sponsorship I'd done for someone else. Then, because I understood how the sport worked, and it's kind of the wild, wild west, kind of still is, I'd built up all these relationships and contacts, people that I wanted to have sponsor me that I couldn't close, and it's because I wasn't, famous enough or in Formula One or in NASCAR. So I started going back to them and said, look, you tell me what you're trying to get in business, and then let me marry you up with the right racing team, the right driver, the right series. And overnight, that just worked because there was very few people at that moment consulting the corporate side of the sport, and I knew how much power the corporate side of the sport has.
How did you work that out then if other people hadn't managed to?
I think everyone was working in their own self-interest, which was, it's about my racing, so I'm trying to get money out of company ABC, where no one was then consulting, and you had all these companies that wanted to come into the sport, but they didn't know who to talk to. Is that the right person, the wrong person? Is that the right amount of money? What should I ask for? And so I was able to, in an authentic way, to be able to go to companies and say, look, I know who you should deal with, who you shouldn't deal with. I know what you should pay and how much kind of power you have as the check writer. So I effectively got companies to say, I've got X budget, here's what I'm trying to do. And then I worked the pit lane, and the sport has such a thirst for sponsorship. I became very popular very quickly because I was the guy with kind of the corporate checkbooks. And so I started the business just registering downtown Indianapolis for $25 out of a rental house with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. She wasn't involved in the business, but she was there supporting me. And that's how the business got started. I never had a business plan. It wasn't intended to become a business. It was like, well, I'm going to just do deals and take a piece of the action to make a living. But then as it started to grow, I was like, well, I need people to help me. And that's how the business got started. So I learned how to run a business by just doing it. And then I've always had, and I have to this day, a lot of mentors. And I have an advisory team here at McLaren, which is something that I had at JMI, which was always trying to surround myself with people that were smarter than me, more experienced than me, asking advice. So I've always been a kind of sponge of information.
See, but that's There's two interesting things from your answer there that really jumps out at me. One was that phrase you used about authenticity, people buying into you, but also what you were doing was translating two very different worlds and being able to connect them, and that requires real listening skills. Would you tell us a little bit around that? Because again, when you mention this tribe of mentors you have, that's still about listening to others.
No, I'm teasing. I think you do need to know how to listen and listen carefully and ask questions. Don't kind of assume if you didn't understand something, ask again.
Yeah.
And then really understanding what someone wants. I found the best way to get something out of someone is to give them what they want, not necessarily what you want to give them. And I think that's why I aligned on the kind of the corporate side was I can get you what you want. And so listening, communicating, and then I've always played the long game. I have no doubt in some situations I've left something on the table, but I think in the long run I've won a lot more than I've lost by playing the long game. And I've seen people that are, as soon as that business card changes or that CMO that was a sponsor has left, now they're unemployed, you kind of drop the relationship. I've stayed in touch because they're going to end up somewhere else. So kind of once you're a friend for a life, not you're a friend because you're writing me a check at the moment. And then I've always felt leaving something on the table is okay if you play the long game, and that's how I've done all my relationships over the years.
So you've managed to get the balance right between success and greed, effectively,
Yeah.
and you've seen other people make those mistakes?
Definitely. And I think greed is short-term wins. And there's sometimes that you go, I think I left something on the table, but I think in the long run I've won a lot more because of that, and there is a balance. And I think it's like going over the limit on a race car. You want to be on the limit, but if you go over the limit, you crash. And I think I've seen a lot of people be greedy, and they kind of have a great 5-year run, but they're not around in 10 years.
So how do you avoid that then?
Doing by what I think is right, and being happy enough, and just knowing when to stop. And I think it's a bit of an instinct thing, and getting into a range where I'm happy, and so I'm good. Let's go, and we'll grow it, and it's going to be long term, and I know I'm going to get another bite at the apple, or an upsell, or a renewal, or you're going to help me out when I come to you. I think people can sense when you're greedy, and they still may do a deal with you because they want or need to do that deal, but you create some resentment, and I think that comes back and bites you.
But there's an interesting dichotomy there, because that requires patience as well, and yet you're in a fast-paced world where you've said the adrenaline of the deal gets you going. So again, would you tell us a little bit how you manage patience with the desire for action?
Yeah, it's a good question. Patience is something that I think I've gotten better at, because if you do rush, you leave stuff on the table, not just economically, but you're maybe not as thoughtful. So I think I'm a lot more thoughtful now, but I also have the benefit of having great people around me. So I think the way I've taught myself more patience is to lean into the people that I'm working with, trust them, empower them, and kind of let them do their thing. And that's forced me to not be the sole decision maker. So I think I've learned more patience by leaning into people. I mean, it is, where I am now, everything is team effort, right? We're 1,000 people, we're 100+ people in the marketing department, and I couldn't do it without them. And it was interesting. Someone once said to me, it was like, when you have up to 100 employees, you do 90% of the work and 10% is them. Then when you get up to 1,000 employees, they do 90% of the work and 10% is you. And then if you get north of 1,000, it's like 90% them, 5% you, 5% luck. And there's some, I think there's some truth to that. So I think my job now is to be the captain of this big boat.
So can I ask then how you hire people, not just for the business, but also how do you choose those people who you have around you in your inner circle, on your advisory boards? What questions do you ask yourself and ask them?
So, do we like each other? I think likability when you're working as hard as we're all working, because the leadership team that I have has the same work ethic as I do. So when you're working 7 days a week, all hours of the day, you got to like who you're working with. So likability has always been very important to me. Transparency, communication, you putting your hand up. And these are things that you pick up by instinct. And then, of course, a lot of referrals, especially at the higher levels. I do a lot of homework on the individuals, talk to their former bosses and coworkers and clients, whatever the case may be. What I personally don't do is usually turn to the resume and see where they went to college, because I didn't go to college. I'm not one that, well, this person went to this college or that college. That doesn't mean anything to me personally. What's most important to me is kind of character, work experience, work ethic. Who do they know? How have they presented themselves? And then some small things. People spell my name wrong all the time. They do that.
Really?
You don't. Yeah, and to me, it's an attention to. I don't care how you spell my name. It's an attention to detail, right? We're very much in the detail business, and you'd be shocked how many people write to me to apply for a job and they get my name wrong. And it's like, if you don't.
Is it an instant no?
It's a total no. It doesn't even get. It's like done.
So as a Damien that with an A, I'm
and it's amazing because if you send me an email, my name's in it, so you've spelt my name right in the email, but you still got it Z-A-C or Z-A-C-H or Z-A-C-K. But to me, that's an attention to detail, and it's like, if you can't get that right.
Well, it reminds me, there's a famous story that's attributed about Walt Disney, that when he used to bring people into his business, he'd take them for lunch beforehand, and he'd look to see whether they'd put salt and pepper on the food before they taste it. Because his idea was they're not open to new experiences, they're already just stuck in old habits.
It's funny, I think we all have our own little pet peeves. Mine is obviously spelling in the name, dating documents, because I live off of briefs, and everyone does lots of drafts. And so I'll print out, stick them in the briefcase, go to read them on a plane, and they're not dated. And it's like, well, I'm not sure which ones. So that drives me nuts. So everyone in here hears date the documents. Number pages. If you're going through a presentation, well, I've got a comment on page. What's the page after the page after the page? It'd be a lot easier if it just said page 12. Yeah. And then my other one, and this just leads to miscommunication, is ASAP. Calendars say Monday at 3:00 or Tuesday at 2. There is no ASAP in a calendar. And I think that leads to miscommunication, because if I said to you, I'd like it ASAP,
what's that?
Do I mean in an hour? Do I mean in a week? It leads to, so it's much easier for me to say I need that by Monday, 3:00. So those are my few operational pet peeves that lead to problems, right? If you're reading two documents and you're reading the wrong one and you react to it. So they're small things, but big things.
So I love that focus on removing ambiguity from your world around you. So if anyone was to come into your team and be part of your inner circle, what are the three non-negotiables that you say, these are the things that I'm not prepared to compromise on?
Good communications, responding. So it drives me nuts. I probably get 300 emails a day, and I respond to each one. Even if it is, I'll get back to you next Monday. I see people that let things sit. I was like, well, I don't have an answer yet. I was like, well, just go back to the person and say, I don't have an answer. You'll have it. I get so many notes from people who go, it's like, I sent a note, but no one responded. And then I'll go to the person. It's like, well, I haven't responded because I don't have an answer. It's like, yeah, but they don't know if you got the email, when they're going to hear from it. Wouldn't it be so much easier to just respond with, I'll come back to you next week or in 2 weeks or whatever. So good communications, total honesty. And, of course, everybody says that, right? There's trust, there's honesty, there's work ethic, right? The kind of standard here. But when I mean honesty, it's like own what you've done. If you don't know it, just say you don't know it. I always say in here, mistakes are fine. Don't make the same one twice, because you learn from mistakes. I mean, as Nicky Lauda once said, he learned more from losing than he did winning, and I understand that. But you got to own them. Don't make stupid mistakes. But mistakes are okay, but own them and then learn from them and then share them. So kind of sitting in if there's something that's gone wrong and no one puts up their hand, that's a non-starter, because we can work with mistakes, we can learn from mistakes, but not if you're not going to bring them forward.
And talking about learning from things, what did you learn on reflection from the Daniel Ricciardo situation, where you had a driver who wasn't necessarily performing in the way that he or other people would have liked? And is there anything that you would have done differently if you could live that situation all over again?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, he came in having won 7 Grand Prix and was, the hottest driver that you could get. And I think we kind of maybe assumed, and I think kind of rightfully so, that he was going to pick up where he left off. I think my one learning there would really just be contractual. I don't think there's anything we could have done differently for him as a driver. Like, I'm sitting here right now thinking, I don't think we could have done something differently to make him more competitive. We tried all that. I think we've had to end the relationship early. We've had to write a big check, which is fine because that's the deal that we cut. I think what I'll do different next time is maybe have some more performance protections for us, and not just assume that a great driver is going to always be great. I think that's the one learning is more of a contractual one, but it's a big one.
And what can we learn? Because for people that watch Formula One, it's just confusing for someone to be so quick and then to struggle as he did. What can you tell us that we can learn from so we can understand the situation better?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're not sure. He's not sure. We've tried changing cars and offering to change people, and it's been over 2 seasons, 2 different cars. So we thought year 1, maybe it just didn't gel with the car. So let's see what'll happen in year 2. It's a totally different car. But we got to the point where our only strategy was hope, and I think hope's not a great strategy. So it's a great mystery. We saw in Monza. It's in there. I mean, there's no doubt the guy did not win 8 Grand Prix by accident. We just weren't able to unlock it together. And Lando's, driving great and getting the car to perform. So I don't think there's anything sitting here that we would have done differently or could have seen or should have known. I think the only thing is just from a business standpoint, we could have contractually kind of, what if it doesn't work? And I think we went into it so excited and not really thinking of a downside scenario that I think we, but you also don't know if you would have got those contractual protections. By sitting here now, I can say, well, I wish I would have had this in the contract, but who knows whether he would have agreed to it. But he also might have, because he would have been going, well, that's never going to happen. So I'll agree to things in contracts.
You've obviously been thinking it over in your head, like, what could I have done?
Yeah.
I know you've got to go. But I think the final question is, it's been a fascinating conversation, full of advice for people, but also full of sort of self-confidence and understanding and knowledge about the world. Where does self-doubt sit in your planet?
I think it's the paranoia, the fear of failing. I don't have a lot of doubt. What I know is what I don't know, and I'm not afraid to go ask. So when I doubt, I don't doubt I can do something, because I'm confident that if I don't know how to do something, I'm very confident I know someone who does. So therefore, I don't ever like, ooh, how am I going to do this? It's like, well, I've got this problem. I don't know much about it, but I'm going to call this person on my advisory board, or I'm going to call a board member, or I'm going to call my chairman. So I'm not uncomfortable with not knowing everything. I kind of thrive on that, and I think one of the strengths is knowing what you don't. no. And so I don't have a lot of self-doubt
Yeah.
because I got a good Rolodex.
It's great. And finally, your golden rule that you'd like to leave people with, your one message for people, some of whom have found it, some of whom are looking for it, but your final message for living a high-performance life.
Yeah, I think working hard is a given. You can always work smarter and trying to drive efficiency and cram more. We've only got 24 hours, whether you're president of the United States or you or me. So it's about how do you get more productivity out of that 24 hours, and that's about working smarter, and you become working smarter by being self-critical and knowing that you can always do better, and then that drives efficiency.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.